Speak to ANC National Spokesperson Mahlengi Bhengu-Motsiri, who's joining us via Teams. Mahlengi, good evening to you and thank you so much for your time. The court putting the brakes on the planned VAT increase. Of course, we've been hearing even from the Democratic Alliance that they're waiting for this particular, ruling by the court. What's the ANC's reaction?
Well, the ANC's reaction is really, in fact, this whole process, Bongiwe, thank you for having us, is a moot point. The ANC had already advocated for a scrap of the proposed VAT hike in various consultations with various stakeholders in society, including the political parties with whom we pledged to do anything and everything to ensure that this does not happen. When the minister pronounced about the removal of the VAT hike, we were overjoyed, and as a result, I'm not certain that the outcome of the court case in the Western Cape High Court has any bearing, given the fact that already, sands had already shifted.
And you speak about, of course, the consultations to look at the alternatives, and we saw that press briefing last week. But let's take a step back, right, to just before the court case started. The minister, while yourselves and other political parties were talking about these alternatives, the minister in his affidavit said that he does have the right to do this as per Section 7(4) of the VAT Act, and he is going ahead with it. That's what we saw in his affidavit. What did you make of just that particular point, especially while all of you were seeking to try and find alternatives?
Well, precisely because National Treasury has got powers that are prescribed for it in various legislations, Treasury can always do that. Public opinion, political opinion, governance opinion can also prevail. I don't think that actually it is a disjuncture. In fact, what we are seeing in South Africa is a new normal in as far as the budget making and budget construction process is concerned. No longer will it be that it is just the view of Treasury. Stakeholders are wanting a bigger say in the making of the budget. In fact, one of the analysts that came before me, I think it's Mr. Mazia, speaks to the issue of legislative oversight and the checks and balances and all of that. And we can assure South Africans that exists. We have a very robust parliament in South Africa. We've got a very robust doctrine, implementation of the doctrine of separation of powers between the executive and the legislature. And all that legislative actors must do is to invoke the power that they do have. And I think this is what we're seeing in South Africa. It's a good thing, it's a positive thing. And what we now know is that a new budget proposal will be tabled by the Minister of Finance following not just the litigation, more importantly, following the consultation by a number of parties. They are also reminding that the parties that came together to deliberate on how we walk away or how we resolve the budget impasse are a majority in Parliament. Now, in any case, whatever the outcome of the court finding of the courts, the sand had already shifted in the direction of, a new budget proposal. So we are quite happy as the ANC that normalcy is going to be realized, because the minister will now have to go back to Parliament via the office of the Speaker, table a new date, table a new proposal, and move the process forward.
But normalcy comes at a cost to the minister and the Speaker. They've been slapped with 50% of the costs each.
Well, I think it's in the nature of democracy, really. I don't want to underscore or undermine the value of each cent in the Republic that gets spent. But I think it is also the price of the type of constitutional democracy that we do have in South Africa. Those things are standard in many modern democracies where a parliament disagrees strongly with the executive. We're seeing that happening in South Africa, and really, it is not an anomaly. You can go anywhere from Europe all the way to the US Congress. there have been instances where the money bills are not adopted because there's no consensus.
Yeah.
We're now realizing that it's uncharted territories. We all have to get adjusted to it. One of the beautiful things about this experience, though, Bongiwe, is that it has actually raised the bar on the issue of how a budget gets put together, how people's inputs, including organized formations and individuals' inputs, can really be utilized in the budget making process. So it's not an indication of crisis from where we are sitting. I know that opposition parties would like to think of it as a stalemate of sorts and as a crisis. But go to Europe, go to Germany, go to the US Congress, you would see examples of where budget has actually been a sticking point and where people had to come around the table in order for the budget to be passed.
So,
in other ways, no longer is the executive alone an arbiter on the matter of the budget. Finally, Parliament is taking a very robust view of the budget making process, and there's nothing wrong about that.
So there's something that you mentioned, though. You say that there needs to be adjustments, right? And this is the new normal and all of that. But one, in fact, the biggest part of your GNU, the party there, the Democratic Alliance that you met with last week, quite unhappy. And you listened to its federal chair, Helen Zille, saying that it's yourselves who went outside the GNU to go work with other parties who are outside the Government of National Unity in order to be able to push this through in Parliament. They seemingly very unhappy with that particular point. So is that also going to be the new normal, that now the ANC is going to seek support outside of the GNU? And if yes, what does it mean then for you as the GNU going forward?
Well, I'm really happy you're raising this question, Bongiwe, because South Africans must ask the question, why do we have the electoral system that we have in our country that allows for parties to be voted into Parliament on the strength of their numbers? And when they do get to Parliament, and let's say in this case, a Government of National Unity is formed, does it then mean that other parties that are not party to the Government of National Unity for this reason or the other, including those, of course, that have signed up for the Government of National Unity by signing the Statement of Intent, are we then suggesting that the voices that matter in South Africa are those parties that are in the Government of National Unity? That's the first issue that I would like to flag. The second issue, indeed, the ANC has been speaking to all parties represented in parliaments, those that elected not to engage with us when we're seeking a resolution to the budget impasse over a 3-week period, namely EFF, MK Party, ATM. Those are the three that come to mind as I speak. All of the other parties in Parliament spoke to the ANC and said, let us resolve this thing in the interest of national unity. And national unity is not being a cliche, like in real terms. Now, the question that you are posing suggests that if the DA is unhappy with the work that the ANC is doing to forge national unity, there is supposed to be a problem and South Africa must react. And I'm saying that cannot be correct. The Democratic Alliance is a party that holds 20% of the national vote share. The African National Congress has got a historic responsibility to unite South Africa. We can say anything about the ANC, but our ability to unite people, bring people around the table, is something we've done since time immemorial, back in the days of 1952, the Defiance Campaign, all the way to the adoption of the Freedom Charter. And this is exactly what we did in the past 3 weeks that culminated in about 12 parties coming together, including the ANC, to say we are going to see to it that the country has a national budget adopted by Parliament. And of course, those are the parties also that hold a 51% plus majority in Parliament.
Yeah.
That said, we will see to it that it happens. It's not expediency, it's really about when all is said and done, what is the national interest?
There's quite a lot, a bit to follow up on that, but we're almost out of time. I just want to just ask you this before I let you go. Be that as it may, right, you do have other people who are saying that what do you do now? Are you going to then expand the GNU? And you then have other people that are raising a concern to say that if these parties are going to be working with you, what does it mean going forward? But also the big question that is being asked now, given how all of this has been handled, is that will the finance minister resign? Particularly, this is a question that's now being asked by the EFF as they're calling for him to resign, and saying that him and the DG actually need to resign over how all of this has unfolded.
Well, I suppose any resignation that gets occasioned must be triggered by a particular policy, a particular law, or a particular ethical standard. We, as the ANC, we're not in the habit of jumping into a conversation that is not guided by principle. So maybe the question is best directed at the EFF to invoke that particular ethical standard that has been broken and cite it, and can even litigate for that matter, because parties such as the EFF thrive on going to the courts and others. So we're not certain that that is correct, because there's never been a time where the current Minister of Finance did disobey his oath to office, unless we can be presented with that particular thing. I do wish to really underscore the point that the management of the budget going into the future presents new frontiers, if you like, even for National Treasury. No longer will they be able to just present proposals and those get looked at and the process moves forward. And also in defense of Treasury, Treasury does have public participation mechanisms. Perhaps us as South Africans have not been utilizing or invoking those as much as we need to do. But a populist call for a resignation of an individual that is untested, that is untested in terms of evidence, and we look for evidence. Maybe when evidence is presented, the ANC will be able to react.
All right, Mahlengi, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. That's the ANC's national spokesperson, Mahlengi Bhengu-Motsiri.